Hi, everyone. This is Lynn Crawford with the Hope Dementia Support Groups, and we are here with our panel of home care and placement experts. So I'd like to introduce Christina Hanksler from First Choice, Joey Williams from Home Instead, Joey Yourchek from Elfin Services, Heather Erikson from CDM, and Alice Wilkinson from Oasis. And I'd like for each one of them to tell you a little bit about who they are and what they do. We'll start with Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina Hanksler. I work with First Choice Advisory Services. I'm a housing and care advisor. I work with families all the time, helping them connect to resources for in-home care and also to different types of senior living. So it might be retirement, independent living, assisted living, memory care, and also adult family homes. First Choice Advisory Services has been in business for almost 29 years, and we've had a presence here in Vancouver for almost 6 years and are enjoying working collaboratively with our partners here to help seniors find the right match.
Julie Williams, Home Instead.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm Julie Williams. I'm the owner of Home Instead, and I've been in business since 2006, so 15 years. And what do? We have caregivers that help families stay, have peace of mind, help seniors stay in their home. And we work with our community partners as well to help bring any other services to the home that our families might need. We meet with families every day and learn a lot about their situation with their loved ones. And from that knowledge going back years and years, you really get to learn, and you see predictable things begin to happen. You see patterns with behaviors and certain things that indicate decline. And then I hope that when I meet with those families that I can point out the things that are of concern and how we can meet those concerns with caregivers, whether it's a lack of nutrition or not moving and getting enough exercise, or maybe there's some dementia that family members aren't noticing. And we work with families to bring them, kind of try to get them on board with what we're seeing, what we are familiar with in those patterns, and help them with that aging process.
Alice Wilkinson with Oasis.
Hi. Oasis Senior Advisors is a free service for seniors and families to help them navigate the path towards senior living, the best possible senior housing. And a lot of times we do, everyone would like to age in place and age at home, and Home Instead and Elfin do a great job with that. But sometimes it's just not safe. And when they kind of go over that cusp, then they can call Christina or myself, and we have extensive knowledge of all the communities in Vancouver, work really hard to find the right fit based on many lifestyle, location, care needs, and just personal preferences to find the right place, which is very important so they don't have to make another move. And then we also, and Christina is also free. We're free. And then we also, yes, we also have a large network of other resources that we can help connect families with to help them during this oftentimes frustrating, scary process.
And Heather Erikson from CDM Services.
Hi, I'm Heather with CDM. My last name on there says Yourchek, but my last name is Erickson. So there's not two Heathers. I don't think there's two personalities here, but who knows? CDM provides in-home care services and adult daycare services. Our day center is currently closed due to COVID, but it will be back someday. And we provide activities like art and music, we also provide restorative therapy, which is like physical therapy, and we have nursing. So that's a great place. We're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Someday we'll be open on weekends too. I just know it. But right now we're just providing the in-home care, and we do accept Medicaid. So that's a little different than some of the other agencies that don't have a Medicaid contract. So Julie and I always work together to kind of share clients that might need a different fit. Sometimes they need her agency, sometimes they need Medicaid. So I think it's a really good partnership that way.
And Joey Yourchek, last but not least.
All right, thank you, Lynn. Well, unfortunately, unlike Alice and Christina, we are not free. We are a privately owned home care agency in Vancouver, I guess I should say Southwest Washington, but we offer in-home care and care management services. So we also help with the aging in place process. But yes, Alice and Christina are great if at home is no longer a good option for you. We've been around since 2001, and we're actually getting ready to celebrate our 20-year anniversary in a couple months. So that'll be exciting. So, the company started out as really just noticing a need in the community to help support the aging population, and started out actually as helping people with financial services. Then slowly noticed that there was a need for care management services. So services that help people, essentially we serve as somebody's advocate, helping them to navigate through complex medical situations. Sometimes it's insurance companies, and sometimes it's just small things like shopping or coordination of other kinds of healthcare services. So not only do we help support people in their home, we also offer another layer through our care management team. That's all I got.
Sorry about that. I had to shut the dogs out. The challenge of Zoom. So basically what this is about is for all of you participants that I'm sure have questions. And if you would put your questions either in the Q&A or in the chat, then we will direct them to the people on the panel. And to give you a little bit of time while you're thinking about your questions, I have a couple that I would like to ask. And the first question is related to our placement folks. And my question is do you have an example of when it might be time? And I bet you have different examples. One of the most difficult things that people ever have to do is to place their loved ones in a facility. And they always wonder if they did the right thing. So I think it's really helpful if we can kind of let them know what it is that we're looking at. So Alice?
Oh, sure. I'd say most of the time there's been a healthcare event, a fall, multiple falls. For me, that's what I see the most often. Something, like that. Memory care is a whole different thing. With memory care, it's when people are starting to wander or doing things that, make it unsafe for them in the home. And that could include falls too.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Alice. A lot of safety concerns that people are talking to us about. Or also the partner that is feeling really overwhelmed and exhausted. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes we'll see not only as the individual that they're concerned about needing help, but then they're overdoing it and now they need help. And so we're fantastic, Alice and I, at helping coach families through. You called because it's time. The in-home care services now, they're recommending that you look at a higher level of care. We're here to help you identify what those options look like and to walk through that process with you so people aren't doing it by themselves. And I think that that's one thing that people don't realize, that we're here and that we're available, and they're trying to do these things on their own. I had an adult family provider tell me recently that there was a family that went to 14 different homes to try to find a match. And that is exhausting and hard. And Alice and I know what's out there, and we can just cut right through it. Tell me what area of town you live in. Let's talk about your financial situation. Let's talk about your preferences and your needs, and let's just get right to it. So,
Right, and we can kind of pare that down, and then we can go with them to make sure that they feel right about it, and, you know, talk the whole way through.
right, when we're setting up
That
tours
easier.
for families, and we'll go with people and we help ask questions and clarify and make sure that there's just a lot of transparency out there. And Alice and I know about all the different communities, and we've had different experiences with them, and we're also neutral in sharing information. This is what I know about this community, and here's some things we need to keep in mind as we go to the next one. So Alice and I are really great at just coming up beside people, standing next to them, and supporting them through this process. Today I was on doing some tours with a gal who said, I just feel really terrible. I've been married 59 years and I want to bring him home, but it's not safe.
Yeah.
And so we talked about how to talk to him about that it's accurate that he needs to get stronger in order to come home. So let's start with, you've identified a house, an adult family home that's going to provide really great care and assist him to get stronger. And when he's strong enough, we'll look at him going home with the right supports. If it doesn't happen that way, at least, you know, we're trying, we're giving that a shot. We're not taking away his hope either, that this is it. You're here, that's it, you're never coming home. We always want to encourage families to keep their loved ones at home as long as it's safe to do that. And we are always talking about that as the first level. Thanks, Alice.
Thanks, Christina.
So for the placement services, here's a question for you. Do you help with Medicaid placement in assisted living and or memory care?
So the state of Washington prohibits us from actively participating in helping people with Medicaid. However, we're helpers. And so I will talk for myself. I got a phone call today. We're talking with this individual about his mother needs hospice care, and he's been taking care of her at home, but she's on Medicaid. So I shared with him the process for him reaching out to his DSHS caseworker, getting a copy of the assessment that has been done and a daily rate. And then when he gets those things, he's welcome to call me back, and I will help him with finding out information about how to do the next piece. So we are not billing, we don't invoice for helping with people that are already on Medicaid services, but our information is vital to them. And a lot of times a caseworker may send them a link to over $450 adult family homes in the Vancouver area. That is overwhelming. And they say, here, just go ahead and find a place. Our coaching can be as simple as, okay, when you call, let them know you have the assessment, you know what the daily rate is, and talk about what's going on with your person. And then go visit them if they said that they're interested. I mean, it really is just coaching them through how we do this for our private pay families. Alice, do you have anything to add to that?
We'll actually sometimes make some phone calls for them and try to find openings, and so that they can whittle that list down.
Yeah. A lot of times, I think this has happened for you too, Alice, where people will call us that have Medicaid questions, and they'll say, you're the first person who's been nice to me.
Yeah.
That breaks my heart. And so how can we not provide support? You know, we would anyway, but then you hear that and you just think, wow, these people are just looking for some support. We can help them, get them in the right queue, and help them find the services that they need so that they can have the help they need.
Well, something else about our relationships that we have with adult family homes in particular, we know, we can cross a lot off that they shouldn't even contact because it's not going to be an option for them.
Mm-hmm.
And but we also kind of have a short list of those who will work with them.
Right.
Probably.
Absolutely.
So how do you get paid? Heard you both say that it's free.
Yeah.
So we have contacts with all the communities in Vancouver. So no matter what community person selects, that they will, for First Choice, they will pay a referral fee to my company, and then the sales lady part of me is a portion of that referral fee. I think Alice is built we're cut from the same cloth in terms of doing the right match. So we're
Yeah.
not focused on how much is this sale worth. We are looking at what is the right place for this person,
Right.
and we're working towards that. And when we do the right thing for the right reasons, the money of it works itself out, and we just we can hold our heads up and know that we're doing
Yeah.
it from integrity.
Another thing I do is my fee to all communities and homes is exactly the same. So there's no one that pays me better than another. And then when you first contact us and you work with us, we'll send you a disclosure form. It's required by the state of Washington, and it'll explain to you exactly how we get paid. We're very, very transparent about it.
And I want a little piggyback on that. I think something that sets us up from some of the national brands that are out there that families may contact. We keep your information confidential. And when I'm searching for you, I'm making those contacts on your behalf. So I like to tell people that I'm like a real estate agent, but for older people. And so I make those calls. I'm the connector. And these communities are not going to call my families that I'm working with until my family has given me permission to give them contact information.
Yeah.
So they're not going to have their phone blowing up and having to tell their story 8 times. That's my job, to tell the story and to set it up and make sure that we have the right matches going, and then to share.
Somebody had
Okay.
asked a question about services in Portland, and Julie had responded that Home Instead has offices in Portland and the surrounding areas. So that's related to home care.
Yeah.
And then there is another question from Portland. Who in Portland is supportive as you are, is as supportive as you are when Medicaid is involved? I have group members that were turned away from support when the helper discovered they only had funds for a couple of months before Medicaid.
That's a bummer, and I'm sorry that's happening.
Yeah.
Both Oasis and First Choice have a presence in Portland. So I'd recommend that you would reach out to our Portland counterparts. You could talk to Alice and I directly also about who would those people be. Who can connect you.
Yeah.
Thank you. More questions? So what are some of the reasons that I might want one agency? I might want to go with Oasis rather than First Choice, or vice versa.
No.
That's
Everybody has
a hard
personality, right?
I love Christina.
I would recommend Alice all day long.
Yeah,
Recommend
I
me,
mean,
because
and
we're
we
in
do
it.
that.
We're in it to help seniors.
Yeah.
We both have a different approach and different personality, different style, but in the end, we have a heart for doing the right thing and making things happen for people. And I think we both work with urgency. So I don't think you can go wrong. I think that regardless of who, we're here to help you. Did you agree, Alice?
Well said.
Okay, thank you.
You
I
know,
just-
and I think one of the really important things for us all to know is what a wonderful community of senior support that we have in Vancouver. It's, it's not any, I'm out for myself. It's everybody is out for the good of the seniors. And I truly, truly believe that. So that's kind of an amazing thing. So what is the average cost of home care for $16 or $16, 16 hours a week? And what adds to the cost, if anything? So are there basic costs, and then it gets more depending on the amount of care? And I would leave that for Joey and Heather and Julie. And, are there differences, and why?
Yes.
Yes, there are. Do you want to go, Joey?
Oh, and I'll say, I think the average really is anywhere from, you have anywhere from 30 to I would say 38 is sort of an average, just dependent on a person's level of care. There are a lot of agencies that exist that also don't do specific things like nurse delegation. So there are certain tasks as a home care agency that we are not authorized to perform in the home setting. And so we actually end up working with a local nurse. And so at that point, a nurse will come out and provide the proper training and oversight for our care staff. And at that point, that is when you will start to see an increase in some of the rates. And especially when we start talking about things like managing diabetes and helping with insulin injections, that's definitely where you'll probably find the highest rates within the home care setting.
Yep, this is Julie, and I agree that that's where you need the higher skill set, and sometimes the harder work. If the dementia is really challenging, maybe the person could be combative, and so it can be a challenging situation where the rate could increase just because you're more highly skilled. Caregivers need to be the ones, or the least skilled in those areas need to be the ones, and it usually comes with experience. So you could see, but what is the basic level? What is it? Usually it means there's no real hands-on care. You might be doing meal preparation or taking them grocery shopping or errands, etc., appointments, and companionship. And as soon as you start with anything where you're putting hands on, then that's again where the skill level and experience comes in, and the price starts to go up a little bit too.
Mm-hmm. And somebody actually the other day asked me, a potential had asked where, when you are increasing those rates, why are you increasing those rates and where are they going? And so I make sure they understand that we are adding the differential in there. The increase in the rate is really a way for us to properly pay and support the caregiver who might have the level of skill that is needed for that particular client. And so that's where that extra cost is actually going, is back to the caregiver.
Yeah, every price increase is going back to the caregiver right now, really, in these times, with being frontline workers and through this pandemic, it really, I think they are essential, and they deserve that, that the money that they're getting, they're worth their weight in gold. And we say that over and over, but it's put your money where your mouth is, right?
Or in the caregiver pocket, one or the other.
Right, exactly right.
Do you hire nursing assistants or certified nursing assistants or the lesser licensure or certification?
At CDM, we hire both.
Us as well.
Mm-hmm.
A home care aide certified.
Yeah, can you
certified
explain
nurse.
the difference? If I came to you and said, I want a CNA.
The difference is about, I think, 40 hours, 50 hours of training. Some of it's in a skilled setting for CNAs, where an HCA can get their training, and with not necessarily in a skilled setting, they would be doing it with practice dummies, etc. Whereas I think the CNA, you're required to go spend a week in a skilled nursing center.
Okay.
That is correct.
So, Heather, can you explain about a Medicaid contract? And is there a difference in care if they're on Medicaid? Can you anticipate that the care would not be as good?
No, our caregivers don't know the difference. They don't know that part of the behind the scenes. And our rate is the same for private pay and Medicaid. It's the same rate. So they don't really know the difference. And no, we don't treat clients any differently based on that.
That's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let's see. More questions here. Where can I find respite care for a spouse with memory issues? As a caregiver, I'd like a few days rest. Thank you. And just speaking to my own group members, I know that respite has become extremely difficult. Can you comment on that?
Sure, there are a couple of communities that are not doing respite, especially in this COVID time, but there are some that are. And so
Yeah.
because things change so quickly, I just recommend that you reach out to Alice or we can talk you through that and make those calls for you and make that easier than trying to call everyone to find out what's happening today.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I
Home
think that,
care would be an option too. I mean,
thank you.
There's a question there about, the wait time, but home care is probably the best option for respite right now because it's in your home, it's safer. But yeah, there is going to be some wait for that, staffing. I don't know where you guys are at, but sometimes we're anywhere from, 3 to 6 weeks out.
Well, and
We're not that far out, but it is more challenging since the pandemic. It's been a little bit harder to hire on folks that want to be essential workers. I think that's going to change once hopefully we can one of these days get school back open. That will help a lot of moms be able to go back to work. So let's hope for that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and thank you, Heather, for mentioning that home care is a great option for respite. I actually was on a call with a potential, and she asked why we were talking about days and times. She said, "Do you guys offer respite services?" Well, I kind of thought that's what we were offering, but yes, we do. So I think that's something, a lot of people don't necessarily know either, is that home care is something that you can sort of use as respite, even if it's not sort of a consistent long-term process. Home care agencies are a great option. And again, they're safe, you're in your own home. So thank you, Heather.
Well, also what I appreciate about our community is that if I have a caller that says I need nighttime care and I talk with them about, here's a couple options to call these places. If I refer them to Julie at the Home Instead and she doesn't have a nighttime person, she doesn't typically call me back and say, "Sorry, Christine, I'm out." She calls Joey and then Joey calls this person and everybody is like working it out to try to support this family. And the same happens with placement. Alice and I may call and say, "Hey, did you hear about this new house? Here, you need to know about this."
Yeah.
We're introducing each other so that we have, the hot off the press information to support families.
So a question, I just need someone to sit with my husband. I don't need any care per se. Where do I look for that? Just a companion.
I would think home care.
Yeah,
Julie?
home care. Yes, definitely home care is that place. And they can, depending on if does he need to be sitting, or they can even try and be more active with them as well. Engage with him with activities, card games. It could be watching movies or it could be going somewhere. So yeah, but just anything to give you a break. But I encourage activity because it can wear folks out with dementia, and that gives you a second break later on. So if you do bring a caregiver in, encourage them to be active.
So I had a placement situation this year, and being quarantined caused aggression. How should I approach another placement so that it's fair and works out well?
I'm not quite sure I understand that.
Well, there's probably a lot of behind the scenes on that.
Yeah.
To try to sort of it. Again, Alice and I would be grateful to talk with you about what was going on, what happened before, how can we support you in this next time, and making sure that we're helping you communicate what's going on and finding the right match that can manage that care. Yeah.
So when someone has a history of aggression, does that history follow them? and make it difficult to find a place for them to go?
If it's in their assessment, it's the homes and communities are going to see that. A lot of times it can be managed with medication. You know, we suggest maybe seeing their Jerry Psych, but and that might kind of appease those worries somewhat if it can be treated. But yeah, that it, you know, that does show up on the assessment, and that goes with them.
So the person that answered that question, let us know if that, you know, if that's what you were needing, or if you want to hear something more. So aside from identifying care facilities that are the best fit for seniors' needs, are you, Christina and Alice, able to share concerns, reports, recent changes, or previous problems, and whether they've been resolved in these various places, such as staff turnover? I assume you're not permitted to make recommendations, but can you direct caregivers to references?
What we could do, what I do is I can direct them to the DSHS site, and every community, every adult family home has a page, and it has all of their reports, all of their inspections, if they've had any investigations. And a lot of times I will read through them all myself and then decide if I want to recommend that home or not. I don't tell people that no, I don't, because you know, there was a problem. We don't do that, but we do. I mean, we can't help but have homes, especially adult family homes, and communities that we feel so good about, and that, you know, we can make those recommendations.
Well, I think that we do a nice job of sharing with families.
Mm-hmm.
I've helped many families move to these communities. Or if somebody says, well, what about that community?
Mm-hmm.
That's not a community that I typically work with. You know, we'll tell people what we know and try our best to be neutral. But I think also we owe to ourselves and to others to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I received a call recently from that community where there was a problem for their loved one. Then I feel like I need to share that. Like, this was an experience, but that doesn't mean that it will be your experience. It's somebody else's. And to that point, when some families will say, well, I did some looking online and they have a lot of bad reviews. And I will ask families to reconsider the way they're thinking about that. That remember, when people are upset, they're going to put things out on the web. Give the provider or the community an opportunity to respond. I read these things. What do you make of that? How, you know, to help me out, to give them some opportunity, because there are communities that have gone through leadership changes and that has resulted in some findings or some citations through the state. It doesn't mean that it will continue that way, but for now, it's something that you need to be, you know, aware of. Mm-hmm. And whether or not you want to take a risk in going down that road with that community, or you're not willing to do that. Again, it's individual, one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I have a comment from someone asking for contact information, and we will send out the contact information for all of our panelists at the end. So
Thank you.
And Joey likes to be called at 2 a.m. Just everybody write that down. He's
very much.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yes.
and we'll be sure to include that in the in what we send out for sure. So what is the evaluation process for knowing what community might be best? You've talked about adult family homes, but you know, sometimes there are assisted livings, there are memory cares, that there's a lot of different places. So is there an evaluation that determines what is the best placement?
Well, we have a detailed questionnaire, and so we've already done it on the community. So we know all their amenities. We know if they have set meal times or open dining. We know all of, you know, everything that they have going on there. And then we've met them and been there several times and know them. And then on the other hand, we have another questionnaire also required by the state of Washington. So everyone does it, that for the client. And then we get into finances, preferences, and then we know what people kind of look for. Maybe they don't care about a pool, but maybe they want a pool table or a library, or what's the food like? What's the activity calendar like? And we, delve into all of those things. And we know that, Christina and I, about every community, exactly how they handle all of these different things. And that we work off that to make recommendations.
It's true. We really do know what's available out there. So when a family member calls and says, well, my grandma will only take a bath and she needs assisted living. And guess what? There's not a lot of houses out there. So there's 2 communities that I've identified that have that walk-in spa tub kind of thing. And that's it. And so we can talk with people about that. So we do a thorough conversation with family, and if with the individual, if that's appropriate and possible, to really get a sense of who they are, where would they be best served, where would they have the biggest bang for the buck in terms of living, where are they going to have the thrive. And then we're doing that matching, like, oh, okay, so you told me these things, that one's out, but these ones would be good. And then we're communicating back with families. Okay, so here's the reasons why I've selected these communities for us to take a look at. And just we're having a conversation and we're including people. So we are not people that say, here are your 3 options, call me after you've talked to them. No, we are very involved in being with people to help them through that process.
Thank you. So are there times that a home care agency might recommend a family consider placement? What are those? Yeah, what are those warnings that you guys see?
Yeah, we definitely will. Well, when they start to need care more often, and then it will sometimes hit a financial piece where not everybody can do pay for 24-hour in-home care. That becomes pretty expensive. But when the need starts to meet, each hour of the day, we're more likely to start recommending getting placed and talking to someone like Christina or Alice for sure. Or dementia can be an issue if all of a sudden they're leaving the stove on, and there's nobody there to make sure that doesn't happen, and they can't turn the stove off. All kinds of issues like that can cause folks to need to reevaluate their wish to be at home. And
I usually recommend it if I see that the family member, like that fatigue, that where you can tell their health is declining, they're barely holding on, you can tell they haven't slept in a week. That's when I might say, hey, have you just thought about it, or tried respite for a week somewhere and see, something like that. That's usually the trigger for me, is when I can tell that person is just, they've used up all they have.
Well, there's that caregiver burnout, and like Julie said, I mean, once we sort of hit that that level of care that really is outside the scope of a home care agency, that's when we really are trying to we're connecting with people maybe like Christina or Alice to find the right fit for them.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, is that home care is home care and it's not health care. And so a lot of people get that confused, but we just do the activities of daily living. We can't do a lot of medical things. So once that comes into play, we might not be able to help meet that need.
Do the home care agencies ever do medication management?
Yes.
Through delegation?
Through delegation.
Okay.
Yeah,
because that can do that, but it's almost more, it can be more economical to use some of the pharmacies that do the bubble packs, so then they don't have to add on the nurse delegation. But not everything can be done that way, like diabetes management, etc. So yeah, nurse delegation would come in for that.
Okay, how about if someone needed intermittent catheterization? Is that something that you have staff that could do through nurse delegation or not?
Well, it would probably depend on if it was part of a whole scope of a care plan. It wouldn't, if it was just a task that you needed done and that was all you needed done, then you're probably looking more at nursing, a nurse, I think at that point, right? Joey, is that what you would say?
That's definitely what
But
I
if,
would say. Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
but if,
I wouldn't let anybody, I wouldn't let anybody do that without a nurse.
yeah,
I'd be a little
no,
worried
right.
about
Well,
it.
no, not without a nurse, but
I
do you
thought you
go
were like,
do
oh,
a
I'll just go
15-minute
on
shift?
in there.
No. A 15-minute
Okay.
shift. Like, would you go do a task-oriented 15-minute shift? Does your agency do that if that's what they're asking for?
Yeah, and
Okay.
unfortunately, that's definitely not something that we do either.
Right.
So,
So yeah.
you know, that brought up a good question. Is there a minimum of hours? And
Yes.
is it possible for somebody to call up and say, well, I have this need and I need it 2 hours Monday, Wednesday, and Friday? Would that be a possibility to have someone, or would you say, sorry, that doesn't work?
It's more difficult because often caregivers are kind of more demanding longer shifts and trying to manage. If they do a 2-hour shift, then they might miss out on a full 4-hour, the ability to take a 4-hour shift, say. So they aren't appealing shifts. And with the labor shortage, we try to meet the caregivers where they're at right now.
I think Julie made a good point. I mean, that's I think a lot of the times, I always try to make sure people understand that, like we have jobs, these are the caregivers' jobs. And so, really piecing together those little 2-hour shifts is really difficult to find caregivers that can, essentially live off of 2-hour shifts. And that's kind of what it comes down to. So I think, as Julie was saying, it's just not economical, and it's not financially supportive enough to just work these little 2-hour shifts. And especially if you're, considering we service the Southwest Washington area. So, we could be going all the way from, say, Woodland to out to Washougal. So you've sort of got a 2-hour shift here and then a 2-hour shift out there. And probably by the time that you wrap all that up, I mean, you might have even lost a little bit of money on the gas that you spent. So, and I'll say like there have definitely been situations where, I think that as a local home care company, we do have, we sort of have this 4-hour minimum, but I do think that depending on situations, we've all been talking about how we all sort of jump in to help just support what needs to be done. I'm not saying that we haven't taken a 2-hour shift before. We've had somebody who really just needed some help with showering. That's all that they needed. And I felt that I needed to do something for that person. They had the caregiver burnout. You could tell they were overwhelmed. They were in tears. And they just needed someone to come out and help the shower, and they don't need the 4 hours. And long story short, I mean, we certainly said, well, let me just see if I have someone who's even interested. And, we had a caregiver who said, yeah, I would do it. It's not a problem. I don't mind the 2 hours. And so we were able to send her out, take care of it. And I mean, she's very happy that we were able to be so flexible about it. But like Julie said, it's really challenging otherwise.
Good job, friend.
So Joey, a specific question for you. What kind of case management do you do? Can you give us examples?
What kind of case management do we do?
What does that mean?
Yeah, so, I think that really what it means is that we all, we sort of all understand that we all live busy lives, and, a lot of us are getting to that point where we're sort of supporting our parents, but we're also working full time. And so really what our care managers do, our care managers have master's degree in social work, and they've been working in this field for many years. But essentially what they do is they develop a relationship with people, and sort of help them serve as, say, like a healthcare advocate. So somebody who is really available to, I know Christina was talking a little bit about some of the work they do, and I do think that there's a component of what Alice and Christina do that's a care manager. But our team as care managers, I mean, along with sort of helping with some of the things even that they were talking about earlier, anywhere from care coordination to attending medical appointments. We have family that live out of town. And so mom needs to get to the doctors, and they really need someone to sit in the appointment with them and communicate with the doctor, advocate for them on certain things that maybe they need, or maybe it's even follow-up services that they need. So a specialist they might need to follow up with. Our caregivers do an amazing job at the things that they do while they're in the home, supporting them in transportation to and from appointments. But sometimes it just becomes a little more complex than what a caregiver is trained to do. And that's really where that care manager steps in and takes care of a lot of that legwork that typically that family member's having to take care of after they get off work at 5. And they're over at mom's house trying to figure out what's going on. And it's sort of just a way for us to provide an extra layer of support for families that just don't have the time to manage those things. So we also do where we have things like wellness checks. So this actually applies a lot of the times to long-term care facilities. So our care managers actually go into facilities, they'll stop in, they'll say hello to the client, and they'll also review the charts. So they'll kind of look at the care logs, they'll look at the medication records, and they'll just get a good evaluation of what's going on and making sure that the care plan is actually being supported and they're getting everything that they need. Because again, that's really difficult sometimes for families to make the time to always stop in and really keep track of those things. And honestly, it's quite stressful because then once you find something that you're not happy about, I think it's really challenging sometimes to find that right person within that community to handle the situation. And so just knowing that you have somebody like a care manager to sort of step in, address the situation, continue to follow up, and then report back to the family, just letting them know that you're taking care of it. And that's just another way that we can help support them. And then, of course, we do a lot of other things like crisis intervention and mediation. So a lot of times we might just have families that need to just have a conversation. So it might be mom and dad's fighting with the daughter and the son about moving, about placement. They don't want to move out of the house. They want to stay there forever. And so I think a lot of the times it's just nice to have that social worker come in and just engage in the conversation and sort of open it up to kind of eventually figure out what's going on there and hopefully come up with a resolution. And of course, lots of other little things like shopping and errands. And then one of the other things that we do that a lot of people don't know is we also serve as healthcare power of attorney for people. So again, sort of similar as family members aren't local, they don't have a lot of other people who they would trust to step in and serve as that healthcare power of attorney. But we work really well with a lot of local fiduciaries, a lot of other people who serve as, say, a financial power of attorney. And so we can actually step in as your healthcare power of attorney and sort of really acting as that care manager with that legal authority that allows us to step in and make those decisions if we had to.
So if I knew an adult orphan, could I refer them to you?
Absolutely.
I'm sure you've heard of that terminology where people absolutely have no one. And when we're talking about advanced directives and they say, well, I don't have anybody to be a power of attorney.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's actually, and that's really, we have several clients who are, probably in their 50s, 60s, who have actually executed a power of attorney and named us as their healthcare rep. So we actually, we have a list. And so we essentially keep them in our system and we check in with them once a year just to make sure, none of their legal documents have changed. Any sort of contact information changes, just to make sure they realize that we're still around, we're still thinking about you, we've got you on the list, so let us know if anything changes. And especially if our role is to step in when that person loses capacity, we want to make sure that we continuously track where they're at and what they're doing, so that when the time comes, we can then put in place the power of attorney documents and really start helping them out. So yes.
That's really good information. Thank you, Joey.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, a lot of
So,
people I don't think know that about us, so I'm happy to share.
Are the advisors for A Place for Mom local, or do they know the local memory care facilities? And I know there's a couple of other national advisors like that. So that's a really good question.
This is where we don't make faces, Alice. We're neutral.
I think all of us, Christina.
We cannot speak to how other businesses are run. We can only talk about ourselves. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Thank you, Christina.
I think it probably answers the question as well.
Yeah.
Heather, talking about the adult daycare, I know that there are lots of folks that are very disappointed about it being closed, but there are also people that really don't know, what it is, how you sign up, how much it costs, all of those kind of things. Could you give us kind of an overview?
Sure. So it is Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. What most people do is they call me and then they come and take a tour. And I like them to come and see what it's all about, see what the clients are doing, really get a feel for what it's like. The cost for private pay adult daycare is $15 an hour. And that's 15, not 50. Sometimes people hear 50 and they get a little startled. And that includes all the activities, any personal care that's needed, and meals. If someone wants to do the physical therapy or they need nursing, then those have some extra charges. A lot of our clients are Medicaid, and so they come for what the state calls a day is about 4 hours. But that's good for most people. People who do more than 4 hours can kind of get a little too worn out. So a typical day looks like CVAN brings a lot of our clients to us. They're wonderful. And so we do hand-to-hand, which means that CVAN takes their hand from their home and hands them off to us. So those clients are always safe. They come in, we usually do a little breakfast, gossip about who the bus drivers are dating. Then we do some group exercises and a group meditation, and then people can split into groups. So there's an activity calendar, and that calendar kind of lets you know what's happening when. So when is art, when is music, when is bingo? Bingo's very popular. We have music therapy on Mondays and Fridays. So people kind of choose the day and the activity that they like the most. Or sometimes someone might say, my husband he likes to be social, but he doesn't really want to do anything. And I'll say, well, you know what, Thursdays is great because there's a whole group of guys at this table and they don't want to do anything either, but talk to each other. So we try to help them find, what works. So then we have lunch and we cook all our own food. We have a wonderful cook who I hope can return someday. And so we can accommodate anything. If you have a diabetic diet, low salt, vegan, gluten-free, whatever you need, we can accommodate that for you. And then we split back into groups and everyone goes home around, 2 or 3. I said, most people don't do 8 to 5. Every once in a while, there's a situation where someone needs that, but it's typically about 4 hours of fun. And we also can provide showers. We have a big, beautiful room where we can provide showers to all kinds of different clients. So even if you need a Hoyer or you can't sit up, we're all set up for those kinds of things. So some clients sometimes just come in for a bath. So we can do that too. I think that kind of is a good overview of what the day center is like.
And can you share what you've been doing since COVID, since you've been shut down?
Yeah. So we are doing virtual activities, and anybody can join anytime, even if you're not a CDM client right now. So those are Monday through Friday. I think it's about 9:30 to 3:30. And it's still similar. We chat a little bit. We still do the exercises and the meditation. And then the activities are, there's a lot of trivia. Sometimes we tour a museum. We still have our wonderful music therapists coming on Mondays and Fridays. We're still playing dice every afternoon, and we're still playing bingo. So we have probably around 15 regulars right now that are logging in and doing that. And if you've never experienced our activities, Director Laura, you're missing out. There's no way you can't smile when you see this lady and her enthusiasm. So I'm sure they'll send that out with the information, but again, you don't have to be a client. So you could just join us and see what it's all about. Or if your loved one might be interested, just feel free to pop on in and see what we're all about. And you could still come and tour the center if you want. It's just not as great when there's not a bunch of people and they're laughing and having a good time. But if you wanted to just see it, you could still come by and I'll show you around.
So, and for those of you that don't know, every month Heather sends out her activity calendar so that we can provide them for our group members, so that anybody can participate that chooses to do so, which I think is extremely generous. So to go back to serious stuff, what's the cost for a 4-hour shift at home?
Well, at CDM, our hourly rate is $32.50. So, and CDM has a 2-hour minimum, and we can do a bath minimum, which is about somewhere in the 47 for 1 hour, but we just have the 2-hour minimum at CDM.
I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
For ours, it would be your 34 an hour, so 136 for a 4-hour shift.
And ours would
That's
be
where we're starting.
And ours would be 132.
Okay, and that is basic for
Basic level care.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, hopefully that answers that question. So we have someone that says, I know you touched on this earlier, but would you please elaborate on when it's time to place someone in a long-term care facility?
I think that's a personal choice, and that's different for everyone. It's not something that the panel can really answer. We can talk with you and we can give you opinions. You could join a Hope support group. That would be a great place to hear from others and their experiences, but I just don't know that it's something that we usually say, okay, you definitely have to place someone. But I think if they're a danger to themselves or maybe a danger to others, like they're wandering or you can't watch them all the time, or they're not getting the care they need, then that would be the time to start looking at that.
Right. And if they're not thriving, if they're lonely, those could be good reasons. If they're falling, if they're leaving the stove on, there's so many things that would be kind of warning signs, and you'd want to start the conversation.
So do the home care agencies, now I know this is tricky, so if a caregiver comes back to you, Heather, or you, Joey, or you, Julie, and says, I think this person is not safe, what is your action on that?
Oh, immediately kind of start investigating, as are there other caregivers that feel the same way, that work with this client? Then we would go to the family and say, hey, you need to increase care, or think about placement if we feel like that the client isn't safe. If we get pushback, that's when we might have to take different steps. Like, it is a danger, and for us, we're mandatory reporters. So if we do feel like there's a risk, we've got to make a step and do something if the client themselves won't do it. And I've done that before. Because
I think it's case by case. I agree with Julie 100%. You do some investigating, you see how you can help, if you can help. And then you kind of take it from there.
But you certainly don't ignore that caregiver.
Yeah, because we certainly are protecting their safety as well. There's a lot of things that could happen.
So if I were to have a caregiver come into the home and it didn't work out, what are the options?
Well,
it
I
wasn't
always
good
say,
fit, didn't get along.
I say if you're not looking forward to the caregiver, it's just not the right caregiver. So I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I would say you might need a different match. Just like a facility, we have comfort levels with people, places, and things. And they need to feel comfortable with that caregiver. So I wouldn't say if it didn't work once, it'll never work. So it would be, that's where I would say.
And honestly, I would say personality match is one of the most difficult things for us as home care agencies, because we weren't meant to all jive with one another. As much as it would kind of be boring, I think. Finding those right matches, and I think that's where really we all are great is if, we always strive to find that right match. And, it happens the first time, that is definitely a blessing. It's kind of rare. But that's, I guess, the great part about, working with an agency is that we do have a whole team of professionals. So if one doesn't work, then let's see if we can find somebody else to really support what it is that you need. And hopefully you guys also get along well.
So I see a question. Did I hear that Christina and Alice have a form that the care partner needs to fill out to put forth their preferences?
No, so it's more of a conversation. We're filling out that form. The state requires us to document certain things. And so we're doing that, but it wouldn't probably feel like, okay, number one question is, it's really tell me what's going on. And as you're sharing with us, we're writing things down and documenting as we're supposed to.
And I wanted to mention that that in Washington State, the referrals industry is highly regulated. So when you work with us, that there are, certain things that we have to do to, stay in compliance. And so I think that kind of lends to our credibility, that we do follow all the rules, and gladly.
So do you all have tools to find the right match? Knowing that intuition is probably useful, but are there assessment tools that you use?
When is this? I would say, I'm not trying to step on toes, but even from like a home care standpoint, there you do a full-on assessment. So you're really getting down to what is this person's routine, what are the things they like, they don't like, and that includes, whether it's games, whether it's they like to sit in their chair and watch baseball, golf, MSNBC versus, say, CNN, something like that. We really get in there and we do a full assessment of what this person is like and their personality. And of course, we do this very similar process for caregivers. And we get to know our caregivers, and we sort of assess what that personality is, what they like, because again, you have some caregivers who may not even like pets, which I'm not even really sure how that happens. It's questionable when we hire them. You don't like pets? But no, really, you just have some people who may not like cats, but they love dogs, or they may not love dogs, but they love cats. And so really, that's another component that goes into really when you're finding that match. That's definitely something that we're always screening and we're sort of documenting so that we really can try to find that perfect fit for both of them.
This person had said, do you use something like a personality inventory or evaluate whether they're an introvert or an extrovert, those kind of things?
I think
we talk about that.
Right. It's a gut level.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think some of it's gut level, but I do talk about, I'll say, are you a chatty person? Do you mind having a chatty caregiver? And if they are not, then I'm not going to put in my most chatty caregivers. Other things are, some people are really great at delegating, and then I could put a caregiver that's a little more hesitant in with someone that's good at delegating. Some people aren't good delegators. I don't want a hesitant caregiver in with that. I want a caregiver that takes charge and sees what needs to be done and does it. So those are, so some things you look at functionality wise as well as personality wise. The job needs to get done as well.
Delegation can be translated to bossy.
Oh, I know she's like, are you talking about nurse?
Yes.
Right.
No, I'm not talking about nurse delegation. I'm talking about asking your caregiver to do something. Some people aren't good at that. So you might have a caregiver in your home for 4 hours and you're too afraid to ask them to do something, that kind of thing. Not exactly. They will have a plan of care and things that they need to do, but there's always time where, so some people are better at asking, some people aren't.
So
making sure you get that.
That evaluations are currently by phone. Is that true? That the evaluation in the home kind of stopped with COVID?
We do most of ours over the phone, but then we go out and do what we call a safety check to make sure everything looks, good.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We'll gather as much information.
Exactly. And I'll say, I think that have, certainly on our end, we really have taken a look at how much information we're gathering in advance. Because I think a lot of times before it really was gathering a lot of that information at the initial in-person meeting. And I think that, just from our standpoint, I think we found that it's beneficial to really sort of gather a lot more of that information, just whether it's virtually. Of course, now we've all learned how to use Zoom. So a lot of us are using Zoom and holding these virtual conferences, and then of course over the phone. And I think that really also helps us to establish what we can help the person with, based on what our skill levels are, and especially taking a look at our caregiver pool. If I sort of take a look at that pool of caregivers we have and look at what skills they have, and somebody calls and I can just see right off the bat that, hey, those skills, their level of care is much higher than what we have. That's really where I'm going to say you might contact, Julie over at Home Instead or Heather with CDM, just because I don't feel comfortable with the skill sets that our caregivers have. And I think you might be better off just going with someone like Home Instead.
Do you include the person who is going to be receiving care in the evaluation? Do you see them and talk to them? And
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well,
as much as it's possible, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They might be in the hospital and we don't have access to talk to them, but we're talking to the family, the care manager, and coordinating services.
okay,
we find that we work with a lot of, legal responsible parties. So power of attorneys, guardians, trust officers.
I will say sometimes there might be someone who's hesitant, a husband or wife, and they'll say, they sign them up and they just want us to say, a friend's coming over, a housekeeper's coming over. So, there have been instances where maybe the person doesn't participate, but there's a reason. It's because they're not going to go for it. So sometimes we don't, but I think we always try to, if we can, include the actual care recipient in what's going on.
The care recipient, it's best to include them as much as possible when possible.
And plus, that's how you get to meet them and learn about all their personality traits.
which can be really fun.
Oh, it's fantastic. I love it.
So Christina, you had mentioned people in the hospital. So as it becomes time for discharge, do all of you make hospital visits? If you are, if this person is going to need home care, if this person is going to need placement, does that make sense what I'm asking you?
Yeah, and I have gone to the hospital before COVID.
Mhm.
You know, I'd go to the hospital and participate in assessments. I'd go to SNFs and participate in assessments, not since COVID, no.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had to do a lot of pivoting and doing business differently, but people
Mhm.
still need our help. And so we're right there to support them through it. It may be that we're doing it virtually, but we are definitely trying to, you know, connecting all the pieces and making sure that we're working in the best interest of the senior that's needing help.
So does care management then contact the various agencies? Or do they give the family member a list and say, okay, here you are?
Oh, yes. Okay, so you're talking about at the hospital. So yeah, typically the
At the
hospital, the
hospital.
care managers, they have a list of all of the referral agents here in Vancouver, and they will share a list. And sometimes make recommendations. Like I've worked with these ones, you know, here you go. And it's the family that reaches out and talks with us. And so Alice and I will ask, have you talked with another referral agent? You know, it's really important that you feel comfortable with who you're going to select and just work with one of us so that there's not too many cooks in the kitchen, so that we're working in their best interest. So, yeah.
And I think I'll say this, I think the hospitals have been doing a really great job lately too at actually contacting us directly to try to help some of these
Yep.
people who, you know, I mean, especially when they're by themselves and they don't have family and they're sort of there.
Mhm.
And so they've been doing their case managers over there have been doing a really good job at helping to coordinate those services with some of the local agencies.
Agree.
Good to hear. Comment. This has been an extremely valuable panel. Amazing people. Thank you.
Oh, Carol.
Oh, you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Is that Carol? Is that Carol?
So my last question is, because believe it or not, we've just about used up our time, is I would appreciate it if each one of you would share what you would like people to know, and the one thing that you wish that people knew. And because you're up in my corner, Christina, I'll start with you.
Go first. Fantastic. I wish that people knew about these services. It's kind of a little secret, and we advertise and, you know, we put the information out there, but I think until it really touches you, you may not pay attention to that this is here and available. So when I'm working with families, when we're done with the project that we've just worked on together, I ask them to please keep us in mind, that there are referral agents out here ready to help and assist. If you run into family or friends or other people that are going through the same thing that we just did, you know now that you can be an advocate and kind of poster child for us, that this is services out there and it's free. So, you know, to reach out.
Joey.
Yeah, and did you say
Joey or
Joey
Julie?
or Julie?
Oh. Either one, whoever can speak quickly.
Ladies first.
Oh, well, thank you. I wish people knew what I knew, and I wish they knew what family members that have been through this knew, that it's a process, and folks that are dealing with it every day see the process happen, and so they can help you wherever you are in that process. But unfortunately, we all have to often experience things to really understand them. I know it, even for me, it took losing my mother to really understand it. But I wish people could understand that before they had to go through it.
Now, Joey.
All right. Well, and similar to kind of what Julie's saying is, I think what, you know, I think what I know now and what I really encourage people to do is really take a look at what your future plan is. Oh,
I know what's going on, Julie.
My girlfriend just dropped off her dog. She's going on vacation, and I'm puppy sitting. So I was
Hey, this is
giving
a
goodbyes
button-up
to
event,
her.
Julie. Come on.
Yeah.
I thought you were applauding me. I was like, wow, I'm doing so great already.
You are amazing. Sorry.
I
No
love
worries.
Zoom.
It's so great. It's very candid. But really, my thing is about planning. I think that when people think of estate planning, they're always thinking of, oh, power of attorney, advance directive, and that's sort of where they leave it. And there's a lot more that goes into that planning process, and this is part of it. So I think when you're really looking at what your estate plan is, and who's that person that's going to be responsible for me when I hit a point where I'm no longer able to? Do I need somebody to stand by and be available for me to help me make decisions, to help me choose a home care agency, or connect me with a senior placement? And that's a really big part of this whole estate planning process. So if you haven't thought about sort of what those things look like, and sort of what do you want to do when you start to age? I mean, you may even want to consider something like independent living. I encourage a lot of people to do independent living in conjunction with some home care. So maybe the first few years you're doing the independent living, you've downsized, so you're not having to manage as much as you were in your household. And then you start to lose a little bit of functionality, and so you want to maintain your independence. So that's where you can sort of, continue to stay where you are safely with maybe a little bit of support. And like I said, so my big thing is really thinking about what is that overall plan and getting it done sooner than later, because you just don't know what might happen in between now and then. And I know Alice said it earlier, is that, sort of, when does that time come that people are deciding that it's time to place mom or it's time to place dad? And unfortunately, it happens when there's a crisis. And I think that for me, my goal, and I'm sure the rest of us are with this, is really to start, or to continue educating people on how important that plan really is, so that you really are ready to go, and that also your family members are not burdened with some of the decisions and the things that are going to have to happen when you did have capacity to make those decisions. So get it done.
That was pretty fantastic, Joey. And now we can, yay for Joey.
Well, thank you.
So Alice,
Well, I've been sitting here trying to think, but I was so focused on Joey that I'm just going to totally piggyback off of Christina and say that I do wish people knew that there was somewhere to go when they were in this situation, that they didn't have to go it alone, and that there's help out there, and not just from us, but from the help that we can get them from other people. And almost all of my referrals actually come from previous clients who have talked to people, and it's it's getting out there. But I do wish that more people knew that we were here to help.
Heather.
I think the one thing I want everyone to know kind of sums up what everyone's been saying is, you're not alone. You're not alone, and it's okay to ask for help. And you live in this amazing community with all these people who are going to work together to help you. And I've lived in other places. I've been helping my mom in Nevada, and it's very different than it is here. So you live in this amazing community that will help you, and you don't have to do it alone. That's what I would like people to know.
I have families that actually apologize to me. I'm so sorry, Christina, I don't know anything about this. And I say, you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
That's my job. And now I'm going to help provide education to you so that you can help another person coming along, and you can encourage them that there is help available. And we are here to support you. So please don't be afraid to call and ask questions of any of us.
So
Yes.
I have a question here that says, if I was an adult orphan, where could I register my plan? This is Joey's concept.
Yeah, I was gonna say probably for me, huh?
Joey, go.
Well, I would say that you can certainly, contact me, and it sounds like our contact information is going to get shared. But then kind of talk about what that looks like. And then, we also have a variety of elder law attorneys. I know, like Joshua Pops, he works really closely with the Hope support group. And so, certainly being able to connect you maybe for sort of what those documents should look like, how everything should be worded. And then, of course, also helping to connect with someone that might be helpful on the financial side of things for you.
Awesome. And we also have another thank you. Fantastic job, everyone, which I absolutely agree. I guess I would share what I want everyone to know is that we live in an amazing community with an amazing group of people that are available to help our seniors, whether they have dementia or just another disability, whatever that is. I also want you all to know that next month we will be having Angela Hansen from the University of Washington talking about medications, what medications that they should be using and what medications that they should not be using. So that promises to be really an interesting presentation. Also, some of you are aware of Dementia Friends and the fact that we have been providing Dementia Friends training sessions for a while. And on the 21st and the 24th of September, we will be having the Dementia Friendly Community Kickoff, which will also be virtual. We were hoping it would be in person, but we're not going to be able to do that. But both of them will be virtual, and it will include music from Earth Tones in Portland and upbeat music in Vancouver. They are collaborating to provide us with some musical interlude. We will have the mayor of Vancouver reading the Vancouver Proclamation, and a Clark County Commissioner will also be providing the proclamation that they provided, which says that we are proclaiming that we want our citizens to be dementia friendly or to be dementia friends. Joyce Beadle, who is a dementia educator that actually has provided education for us, will also be there to provide our keynote speech, not that I can talk. And she is always entertaining, and she does it in the most respectful way. So we have the flyer, and I will send it out, and it also has the links to join us. So that's what we got. And I will send out contact information for all of our panelists and the flyers for the upcoming events. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Right.